I used to believe in love. The kind that sweeps you off your feet, that makes your heart race like you're 16 again, that convinces you this time it's real. And with Jake, I thought I'd found it. He had this effortless charm, the kind that made me feel like the only woman in the world. Candlelit dinners, whispered promises, long nights wrapped in his arms, talking about dreams and places we'd go. Nearly a year together, and I was sure. This was it. This was him. But love has a funny way of making you blind. I ignored the red flags at first. The sudden work trips, the late-night phone calls he never explained, the way he'd glance at his phone and flip it over, like he didn't want me to see. Maybe I didn't want to see. Because why question something perfect? Then one night I did see. I wasn't even trying. His phone lit up while he was in the shower. A simple message. One I wasn't meant to read. Dinner at 7, don't be late. Love, your wife. I felt my stomach drop. My hands went cold. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Your wife? I swallowed hard, staring at the screen like the words might rearrange themselves into something innocent. But they didn't. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even angry. I was intrigued. You lied to me, Jake? Let's see how far this game can go. I didn't say a word that night. When Jake came out of the shower, all smiles and easy charm, I kissed him like nothing had changed. I laughed at his jokes, let him wrap his arms around me, let him believe I was still the same woman who looked at him with stars in her eyes. But inside, something new was growing. A fire, slow and steady, burning away every trace of the woman who would have cried over him. The next day, I started digging. It wasn't hard. Men like Jake, men who think they can have it all, always leave breadcrumbs. A quick search of his name, a few deep dives through social media, and there she was. Rebecca Caldwell, wife of Jacob Caldwell, married for 7 years. 7 years. Longer than I'd even known him. My stomach twisted, but not with pain. No, this was something else. Something sharper. I scrolled through their pictures, smiling on vacation, posing at a charity gala, hands clasped like they belonged together. She looked kind. The kind of woman who folded his shirts just right, who left little notes in his lunch, who believed in him the way I once did. And yet, here he was. Here we were. I should have felt sorry for her. Maybe I did. A little. But mostly, I felt powerful. I could have walked away. Could have told her everything. Could have sent the screenshots and washed my hands of him. But where's the fun in that? Jake had played his game. Now, it was my turn. The first test was simple. A casual question over dinner, carefully placed between sips of wine. So, do you ever think about getting married? I asked, tilting my head just enough to seem curious, not suspicious. Jake barely faltered. He chuckled, reaching for my hand across the table. You know me, babe. I like to live in the moment. No need to rush things, right? Liar. I smiled, pretending to accept his answer, pretending that my heart wasn't pounding with the thrill of the game. Because now, I knew. Knew how easy it was for him to lie straight to my face. Knew he thought he was in control. But he wasn't. Not anymore. That night, while he slept beside me, I took my time. Scrolling through his messages, taking screenshots, sending everything to myself. Photos of us, texts full of sweet nothings, promises he'd never meant to keep. I gathered it all, piece by piece, like a patient collector. Not for revenge. No, revenge is messy. This was something else, something better. As I watched him sleep, oblivious to the storm brewing right next to him, I let myself wonder, how far could I push this? How much could I take before he realized what was happening? I guess we were about to find out. I could have confronted him, could have thrown the evidence in his face, watched him stammer through excuses, maybe even seen a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But that would have been too easy, too predictable. And men like Jake? They don't deserve easy. So instead, I smiled. I kissed him like always, laughed at his stupid jokes, and let him believe I was still the clueless, adoring girlfriend. I played my part to perfection. More affectionate, more devoted, the kind of woman he thought he could keep on the side forever. And while he basked in the illusion of control, I built mine. Every stolen glance at his phone, every dinner date, every whispered "I love you" became a piece of my puzzle. I started collecting things: text messages, voice notes, pictures of us that told a very different story from the one he was selling his wife. I wasn't reckless about it. No, I was careful. Jake was too arrogant to suspect me, but arrogance wasn't the same as stupidity. If I wanted this to work, I had to make sure he never saw me coming. And then, one evening, I planted the first seed. We were curled up on his couch, my head resting against his shoulder, his arm draped lazily around me. The perfect picture of love. I let out a small sigh, almost too quiet to hear, then whispered, "Wouldn't it be awful if your wife found out about us? I wonder what she'd do." His body tensed, just for a second, but I felt it. Then he chuckled, shaking his head like I'd told some harmless joke. "Come on, babe. You know that's never gonna happen." I just smiled and kissed him. It had already started. Jake thought he was untouchable. That was the beauty of it. Men like him, men who juggle lies with practiced ease, believe they're always one step ahead. They believe women like me exist to orbit around them, powerless, waiting for whatever scraps of love they decide to throw our way. He had no idea how wrong he was. A week after I planted that little seed of doubt, I made my first move. Nothing too big, just a simple request. We were out at dinner, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my wrist, when I sighed and let my shoulders slump, just enough to make it seem real. Ugh, I hate asking, but I'm in a bit of a tight spot this month. I bit my lip, looking up at him like I was embarrassed to even say it. "Would you be able to help me out?" Jake barely hesitated. He leaned in, all warmth and reassurance, the perfect boyfriend. "Of course, baby. Just tell me what you need." It was almost funny, how easily he fell into it. A quick bank transfer, a soft kiss to my temple, and just like that, I had my first payment. Not out of guilt, not out of love, but out of fear. Because no matter how much he tried to hide it, I saw it in his eyes, that flicker of panic, that moment of hesitation before he hit send. He was starting to realize something was off, and that was exactly what I wanted. The thing about fear is that it lingers. It settles deep, gnaws at the edges of certainty, turns even the most confident men into something fragile. And Jake? He was starting to crack. I kept my demands light, almost harmless, small things at first. A new dress, a spa day, a little extra cash for emergencies, always wrapped in honeyed words, always punctuated with a sweet kiss, a reassuring smile. And every time, he paid. Eagerly. Desperately. But I could see the weight of it pressing down on him. The way his jaw clenched when his phone buzzed. The way his fingers hesitated before unlocking his banking app. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about her. About what would happen if this perfect little life he'd built came crashing down. One night, as we lay in bed, I turned to him, resting my head on his chest. His heartbeat was steady, but his breathing? Shallow. I let the silence stretch just long enough before whispering, "I feel so lucky to have you. I mean, I know you could have anyone. You must get tempted sometimes." His body stiffened. "You're the only one, baby," he said too quickly, too smoothly. I smiled, tracing slow circles on his skin. "I'd never want to do anything to make things hard for you. You know that, right?" He swallowed. "Of course." "Good," I murmured, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "Because keeping secrets? That can get very expensive." He exhaled a shaky laugh, but I felt it. The shift, the realization. Jake wasn't playing the game anymore. He was trapped in it. Fear makes people reckless. It makes them sloppy, makes them desperate. And Jake? He was all three. At first, I kept things subtle. A few more unexpected expenses, a little more pressure, always framed as a need, never a demand. And he paid. Every time. But now, I wasn't just watching him. I was studying him. The way his fingers tapped anxiously against his glass at dinner. The way his shoulders tensed when his phone buzzed. The way he hesitated, for just a fraction of a second, before opening his banking app. He was unraveling. And that's when I knew it was time to turn the screws. One evening, over wine and soft candlelight, I let my voice drop into something quieter, something dangerous. "You trust me, don't you, Jake?" I asked, tilting my head, watching him closely. "Of course, baby." His smile was tight, forced. I sighed, playing with the stem of my glass. "It's just, I feel guilty. You do so much for me. I just don't want to make things difficult for you." He swallowed hard. His hands curled into fists for just a second before he forced them to relax. "You're not. I want to help you." I smiled, reaching across the table to brush my fingers over his. "I know, and I appreciate it. Because, keeping secrets? That can be exhausting." His grip on the wine glass tightened. He forced a laugh. I just sipped my drink and let the silence stretch. He got the message. I could feel it now, the shift in power, the way the balance between us had tipped. Jake was still smiling, still playing his role, but the edges were fraying. The once cocky man who used to tease me for pouting when I didn't get my way now held his breath every time I spoke. I tested him. Small things here and there, a sudden emergency that required another bank transfer. A hint, just a whisper, about how stressful it must be to juggle everything, to live two lives. Every time his reaction told me more than his words ever could. One night, as we lay in bed, I sighed softly and let my fingers trace lazy circles on his chest. I murmured, "I was thinking today, if something ever happened to us, if, I don't know, we had a falling out, do you think we'd stay friends?" His whole body tensed. "Why would you ask that?" I shrugged. "Just wondering. People can be so messy when breakups go bad. Things come out, secrets spill. It's all so unnecessary, don't you think?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, I felt his heartbeat quicken under my fingertips. He was picturing it, imagining what would happen if I stopped smiling, if I stopped pretending, if I decided to open my mouth. "That won't happen," he finally said, his voice tight. "Because I take care of you, don't I?" I smiled against his skin. "You do." But in reality, he was the one taking care of me. Jake was unraveling faster now. I saw it in the way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his fingers hovered over his banking app, reluctant but obedient, the way his laughter had lost its warmth, replaced by something strained, something hollow. But I wasn't done. Not yet. One evening, I let my voice dip into something almost hesitant, almost guilty. "Baby," I sighed, running a finger along the rim of my wine glass. "I hate even asking, but I think I need a little more this month." He flinched. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but I caught it, the hesitation, the tightening of his jaw. "How much?" I tilted my head, watching him, studying him. "Enough to keep things simple," I said softly. "I just don't want any stress between us." He exhaled sharply through his nose, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Anything for you." "Liar." I watched as he unlocked his phone, his fingers moving slower than before, his breathing shallow, his shoulders tense. When the confirmation pinged on my phone, I glanced at it, then at him. He looked tired, worn, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring at the drop. "You're amazing," I whispered, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He barely reacted. That was when I knew. Jake wasn't just afraid anymore. He was trapped. There's a certain satisfaction in watching a man like Jake break. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, layer by layer. First, the easy confidence starts to crack. Then, the charm fades, replaced by something tight, something desperate. And finally, the panic sets in, the real kind, the kind that grips the throat and won't let go. Jake was there now. He barely smiled anymore. He wasn't sleeping well. He was always distracted, always checking his phone, flinching at every notification. And me? I played the perfect role, soft, sweet, understanding. He was drowning, and I let him believe I was the only thing keeping him afloat. Then, one evening, I made my final move. "Baby," I murmured, resting a hand on his knee. "I hate to even ask, but I need one last thing from you." His breath hitched. "Last?" I nodded, giving him my best reassuring smile. "Just one final thing. After this, everything will be fine. No more stress, no more worries." He wanted to believe me. Needed to believe me. And that's why, after a long, shaky exhale, he nodded. "Okay, how much?" I named my price. A number that made his eyes widen, his Adam's apple bob in his throat. He hesitated, but only for a second, because he knew what would happen if he didn't. And so, with trembling fingers, he did what he had always done. He paid. And just like that, the game was over. The moment the transfer went through, I felt it. Finality. The weight of the game settling into place, the last piece of the puzzle clicking in. I watched him stare at his phone, his knuckles white against the glass, his breath slow and uneven. "It's done," he murmured, almost to himself. I smiled, brushing a hand over his arm. "See? Nothing to worry about now." He didn't look at me, didn't say anything. I stood, stretching lazily, like this was any other night. But inside, I was electric. The thrill of it, the control, the power, rushed through me like fire in my veins. I walked over to my purse, casually slipping my phone inside. Then, with one last glance at him, at the man who thought he could play me and win, I said, "I'm gonna head home. I'll text you later, okay?" He nodded, slow and distracted. He still hadn't looked up. Perfect. I stepped out into the night, inhaling deep, letting the cool air settle in my lungs. I didn't need to rush. There would be no scene, no confrontation, no fireworks, just silence. Because by the time he realized what had really happened, I'd already be gone. I took my time walking home. No need to hurry. No need to look over my shoulder. Jake was too tangled in his own web to notice that I'd quietly slipped away. He thought I was just a phone call away, a reassuring text waiting in his inbox. But as soon as I stepped inside my apartment, I did what I had been planning for weeks. I blocked his number. Every account, every email, every trace of him, erased in seconds. I watched the screen for a moment, almost expecting some last-minute hesitation, some small flicker of guilt. But there was nothing. No regret, no second thoughts. Just relief. I poured myself a drink, sinking into the couch as the weight of it all settled in. I thought about Jake, about what he must be feeling right now. Maybe he was still sitting there, staring at his phone, waiting for a message that would never come. Maybe he was pacing, trying to convince himself that everything was fine, that I was still under his thumb. Or maybe, just maybe, he had already started to panic. His money was gone. His secrets weren't safe. And worst of all, he had no control. A slow smile curled at my lips. He thought he was the one pulling the strings. But in the end, he was just another man who never saw me coming. Freedom doesn't come in a dramatic, cinematic moment. It doesn't hit all at once, like a sudden breath of fresh air. It creeps in slowly, settling in the spaces between heartbeats, in the quiet certainty that there's nothing left to fear. I woke up the next morning in a new city, in a hotel room I had booked weeks ago, wrapped in crisp white sheets that smelled of expensive detergent and victory. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. Jake was officially out of my life. I took my time getting ready, letting the hot water rinse away the last remnants of the woman he thought I was. The fool who had once believed in his lies. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone sharper, someone smarter. Someone who took what she wanted and left before the house of cards collapsed. By the time I stepped out onto the city streets, coffee in hand, the weight on my shoulders had vanished. No paranoia, no second-guessing. Just the steady rhythm of my heels clicking against pavement, the quiet hum of a life that now belonged entirely to me. Jake was probably figuring it out by now. The silence, the absence, the realization that I hadn't just walked away, I had erased myself from his world entirely. And that That was the best part, because he could beg, he could scream, he could call every number he had, and it wouldn't change a damn thing. I didn't check my old accounts. Didn't scroll through messages or peek at his social media to see if he was spiraling. That part of my life was over. Jake no longer existed to me. But the universe has a way of giving you a final encore, even when you don't ask for it. Days later, a new email slipped into my inbox. A name I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime. Jake Caldwell. No subject line. Just an empty, desperate message waiting for me to open. I could have deleted it, blocked him like I had everywhere else. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. Marie, please. I don't know what happened. I don't know why you're doing this. Just tell me what you want. I need to talk to you. I stopped reading. I could hear his voice in the words, the panic, the confusion, the pathetic hope that maybe, just maybe, he could still fix this. As if I had left him some way back in. As if this was all a misunderstanding. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment settle. Jake Caldwell, reduced to begging. If only his wife could see him now. If only he had seen this coming. I typed my reply slowly, savoring every keystroke. I stared at the blinking cursor, my fingers hovering over the keys. There were 100 things I could say. I could be cruel. I could be kind. I could lie, or I could tell him the cold, unvarnished truth. But in the end, I kept it simple. You should have been honest from the start. Consider this my fee for keeping quiet. Oh, wait. Looks like your wife found out anyway. Oops. I hit send. For a moment, I just sat there, watching the screen, waiting. I imagined him seeing it, his pulse spiking, his stomach dropping. Maybe he'd stare at the words, reading them over and over, hoping they'd change. Maybe he'd throw his phone, curse my name, scream into the void of his own making. Or maybe, just maybe, he'd finally realize what I had known all along. Men like Jake always think they're the hunters, the ones in control, the ones setting the rules, until they meet someone like me. I closed my laptop, took a slow sip of my coffee, and smiled. It was time to move on.